Hello everybody and welcome to another Grow Your Future short video. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about answering common interview questions. So the first step to answering interview questions is to understand exactly what the employer is asking you about. So we've got some examples on the slide here of some of the common things that employers might ask in an interview. This list is by no means exhaustive, but a good starting point to help you prepare. So we're going to go into a little bit more detail on some of these in the later slides, but just to start with the first one, and we'll go through them one by one. So tell me about yourself. What is that sort of question looking for? Well, really, it's looking for your motivations and your story. So you don't necessarily need to go into extensive detail with a question like this. It's often a bit of an introductory sort of question to relax the person who's being interviewed and get them settled in. It is a good opportunity, though, to introduce yourself, maybe what you're studying at university, why you've applied for the role briefly, and maybe your motivations for being there today. So a really good way to start an interview and set the tone. The second one on the slide is why do you want this role? Now, this is really an opportunity to show your passion, your motivation, and that you've also done research. So it's your chance to say, why have you applied for the role? How does that maybe fit in with your career goals and what you're interested in, your values as well, and also a chance to talk a little bit about what you already know about the company and show that you've done that prior research. Strengths and weaknesses are a chance to show your self-awareness, so your ability to reflect on maybe what you're good at and maybe where you want to improve. And describe a time when is often known as a sort of behavioural or competency-based question. And this is where you have the opportunity to talk about a particular skill and bring in examples of transferable times that you've done that. So we'll go into that a little bit more detail in a moment too. Starting with, though, in a little bit more detail, strengths and weaknesses. So you'll often get asked about these in an interview. And like I said a moment ago, it's an opportunity for you to show your self-awareness and show that you have spent time reflecting on where your strengths and your weaknesses lie. So if you're asked a question like, can you tell me about your strengths? It's important to try and think of maybe one or two skills that are relevant to the job. So try and pick ones that you've maybe read about that are important in the person specification. It's important to be really honest, but also be strategic, as it says in the top tip on the slide as well. So don't choose skills that you wouldn't necessarily consider to be a strength just because they're in the person specification. But if there are ones that closely align or seem to fit, then choose that as an example. Back it up with an example or a result if you can do, and be confident but not boastful. So it's an important opportunity for you to sell yourself, but it's important that you also try not to do that in a boastful way. For the weaknesses element of that, pick something that is real again, so being honest, but not a real deal breaker. So if they're saying that they really, really want a hugely passionate team player, then maybe don't pick that as your weakness. However, pick something that you know that you can talk about, that you've reflected on, and that you're trying to improve. So say, for example, you know that you're not very good at organisation. That's always a good one to choose because you can talk about ways in which you are trying to be more organised and putting things in place to make you a more organised person. The next sort of question that I wanted to cover in this video is those competency-based questions that often start with describe a time when, or tell me about when you did. And they're often finishing with an employability skill like teamwork or communication, problem solving. The interviewer will often adapt these depending on what role you're applying for and what skills they're mentioning in the person specification. But this is a really an opportunity for you to draw on your experience and show your transferable skills. So what do we mean by the STAR technique? The STAR technique stands for situation, task, action, and result. And if you're asked a question like, for example, describe a time when you have shown good teamwork skills, you can use this structure to answer all the, make sure you hit all the key points in a question like that. So firstly, just to talk you through the STAR technique, situation means set the context. So a lot of students don't do this, but it's really important to set the context of the example that you're talking about. So make sure that you tell the person what it is you're doing, what was the job role, what company was it for. So set that context so that you understand the rest of the example. The task part is so when you then talk about what task you were given, it might be a challenge that you were given or had to overcome, and talk through that in a little bit of detail so that there's that further context being added. Thirdly, the action part of the question. So this is the bit where you need to provide the most detail. So it's what you did. So with that task in mind, what did you actually have to do to get to that end result? What were the step-by-step processes that you had to work through? So focus mostly on this part when you're answering a question using the STAR technique. It's almost the detail that it provides all the information about when you've used that specific skill and backs it up with evidence. Finally, the result, what was the outcome? So make sure you finish off that answer with a outcome. So that could be that you successfully completed the presentation. It could be that you submitted your assignment on time and got a high result. Make sure you round that off with something at the end. Okay, moving on to some tips for for leaving a lasting impression. So make sure that when you go to any interview that you research the company and role and tailor your answers as much as possible to what they're looking for. So if they're talking a lot on their website about teamwork and collaboration being really important to them, then make sure that when you are given the opportunity to, you're talking about being a really good team player. Practice common interview questions with a friend or in front of the mirror. It might sound silly, but actually talking out loud, articulating what you would maybe want to say in that context or in that real life environment when you are in the interview can be a really good way of preparing. Use positive body language wherever possible. So trying to make sure that you appear like you want to be in the interview, even if you are feeling really nervous. Smiling, being friendly, can often leave that really good impression at the end. Try and prepare some questions to ask at the end, and be yourself because confidence is key, not perfection. And that's really important to sort of end with there. So we've gone through a few examples there of common interview questions. There are lots more out there, but today we've just covered some of those really popular ones that often get asked. If you want to go through some more interview questions, you can book an appointment with the careers team and Grow Your Future. We can even do mock interviews that are tailored to any particular interview that you've got coming up. As always, you can contact us through the means advertised on the slide, and there's lots of resources as well online on the careers portal on how to approach interviews. But if you are at all in need of any help or have any questions about the slides today, please do get in touch. Thank you. Bye.